We're on.
Great.
Hey, podcast family. This is Jeff K. Welcome to Echoes Across Time. And for this week's guest, we have Karaleigh Garrison. So, Karaleigh, please take it away. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your motivational story. We're all very excited to hear it.
So, hey guys, I'm so happy to be here. I'm Karaleigh Garrison. I'm a singer-songwriter. I have my background right here. A podcast host, motivational speaker. So let's see. There's a lot about me, so I'll try to sum it up and then get into this story because it's so good. My favorite thing to share about myself is that I'm a singer-songwriter. I actually have my debut album is coming out on May 23rd, and the website to find all the information about that is KaraleighGarrison.com, which is at the bottom. And a lot of my music revolves around this story that I'm gonna share in just a minute, which is about my son. I actually have 3 special needs kids, and you'll hear more about that in my story. I'm also a podcast host. My podcast is called Seeking Sunshine. My album's also called Seeking Sunshine. So if that tells you kind of what I'm all about, which is about finding the sunshine, the joy in every circumstance, it's really important to me. It's kind of like a life motto for me, finding the joy in the sunshine, no matter what's going on. Yeah, dive in.
Let's hear a few bars.
Of which one? What do you want to hear?
Whatever song that you like.
So my podcast is called Seeking Sunshine, as well as my first single is also called Seeking Sunshine. So it goes, I'm seeking sunshine, I'm seeking sunshine, I'm seeking sunshine. Oh. So that's a fun one. Yeah, it's fun. There's the singles out. I have actually like 5 singles out, but then all the singles have been like completely redone and revamped, and you can hear the brand new amazing edition of that, as well as a really great song called Wait on the pre-order page for the album. So go listen to those. I'm excited for them.
And is that on your website, or is it on iTunes? Or is it on both?
You can hear the 5 singles I have out everywhere. You can hear the revamped versions. So basically, I've been learning how to produce and do everything myself over the last few years. Nice. And it's been a huge journey. And then I got to the point where I realized I needed to branch out and ask for help. And so I've had other people helping me do all live instrumentals. So everything that's out on, Apple Music and iTunes and Spotify and all the places is all the stuff that I did all by myself. And then the stuff that's coming out.
Sorry, how did you come to the conclusion that you needed help versus doing it yourself?
My amazing husband, I was all ready to release my album last September, and I came to him with my final song, and I was like, this song is so good. I'm all ready to release it, and I played it for him, and I was like, it's so great. And he was like, uh-oh, it's so good. You can't release it yet. It deserves to have live instruments, because I actually don't play any live instruments. I was doing it all digitally, yeah. And I've learned so much, and I'm really, really talented. But you know what? I just can't do everything. And I've really been amazed as I've opened myself up to having outside input, how much more incredible my music's been able to become. It's been really eye-opening to me. So my music has just become so much better than I ever could have imagined because of this whole experience. So I'm really excited for the album to come out. So anyway, we're kind of digressing, and that's all right, because I'm really passionate about my music. And so much of it is about my kids, because like I said, I've got 3 special needs kids. And actually on top of that, my husband's been disabled for the last decade, and that all plays such a huge part in the story that I'm about to tell. So if you don't mind, I'll just dive in, and so that we don't take totally forever.
Go for it.
Back in 2018, which was, right before the pandemic. And what's kind of funny about this is like 2018 was definitely like the hardest year of our lives for my family. And then the pandemic hit, and it was like, oh, this is it. This is easy in comparison, right? So 2018, I'll set the stage for you. At the beginning of 2018, we were living in Texas. My husband and I and our 3 kids. 2 of them had autism diagnoses, and they were 7 and 8, and our youngest was 3 or 4 at the time. And our youngest didn't have his diagnosis yet. It was coming later. And life.
I'm going to stop you just for
Yeah.
a second. For those who are watching and or listening, briefly explain to them what autism is.
Yeah. So autism's funny because it's this humongous spectrum. And they say that if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. And we're at this really funny point where the other 4 people in my family all have autism, including my husband, all except for me. And they all look so different in their diagnoses. Autism is, I've actually really studied the DSM-5 in depth. So it's characterized by social limitations in the way that you are able to interact with other people. Like you just don't understand social interactions quite the same. It's also characterized by what am I thinking? by you just don't interact with the world in the same way other people do. Like your clothes feel weird on you, and you don't integrate sensory information in the same way that typically functioning people do. So your food doesn't always taste the same way, and you can't kind of stand some certain textures, and it's different from person to person, and it can show up in really weird ways. Like sometimes you can't stand that buzzing that comes from lights that most people can't even hear, or you can't stand or you really want to have really bright flashing lights all the time, and it's just different from person to person. But those are some of the characteristics that you might find. So I've got 2 of my kiddos are high functioning. One is really severely autistic. And then my husband, he's only just come to realize that he's on the spectrum, and he doesn't have like a formal diagnosis yet. But a lot of adults, as their kids are being diagnosed, are starting to recognize themselves as probably being on the spectrum, because that's how wide of a spectrum it is. And so 2018, my husband had been officially declared disabled, and he'd actually not been able to work for about 4 years at that point. And he was a whole slew of different things going on, but the biggest one was called familial episodic ataxia, and that meant that he was collapsing whenever he had too much stress, whether that was physical or emotional. And he couldn't vacuum, he couldn't do the dishes, he couldn't do anything because it would cause him too much stress, and he would collapse, and I'd have to pick him up and carry him to bed. And he's a lot bigger than I am. So it was a lot of work. And he would have multiple episodes a week, and he'd be in bed for days at a time because he was, and when he would have an episode, he would shake. He would tremble really severely and not be able to speak very well. He would stutter really severely. And he was in and out of the hospital. He was actually admitted to the hospital every month for a year for a different reason. We had a really tough time when we lived in Texas. And so we got to the beginning of 2018, and we felt really strongly that we needed to move back to Utah, which is where we had met and got married, so that we could finish our bachelor's degrees at BYU. And we were like, that's crazy. We just got all the doctors set up. We just got approved for SSI so we could survive, because I was busy. Social Security.
Okay.
Disability. Yeah. So we were finally like settling in, getting out of complete chaos. We had, a 3-year-old who was really difficult. We had a 6-year-old and 7-year-old who were really difficult because they both had autism, and doing therapy constantly, like 3 and 4 hours a day on top of school. I was trying to do school online, and it was just like, how can we had our in-laws down the street from us who were babysitting all the time because my husband was constantly in the hospital. And it was like, how can we move in the middle of this? This is crazy. But we felt so strongly that we needed to move. And so when we finally got approved for SSI, we were like, all right, we're going to just trust this feeling. And we're really religious, so we were very prayerful about it. And we moved to Utah, away from family, away from all that support, back to finish our degrees in college. And we had a really, really crazy fall. Like that fall, we moved over the summer, and we had a really difficult time finding housing. And we had one place that we tried to move into, we had put our deposit down and we'd paid 2 months rent. And then they turned out they lied about a bunch of stuff on the property, and they stole all that money from us and took us to court. And we never moved in, and they still kept all the money. And then we moved into a different house.
Sorry to interrupt, but
Yeah,
why
no
would
worries.
you move if your support is someplace else? All your support is in a different state. Why would you move? And I guess to isolate yourself from that support group.
That's a great question. And all I can tell you is, so again, our foundation is so religious. That is the foundation of our marriage and everything that we are. It is the foundation of all of it. And we prayed really strongly about, do we move when this seems so crazy? And the answer that we got was, because I was praying, I was like, will we be okay? Like, will we survive this? Because this seems crazy. Will we be okay? And the answer I got was, it won't just be okay, it will be amazing. And what I want you to know is, like, when we moved, my husband was walking on a cane. He couldn't walk. Like, he couldn't walk across campus to get to his classes. And here we are 4 years later, and he jogs for fun sometimes. He's off of all of his meds. He's had a miraculous recovery. He has a job full time. He's doing better than he's actually ever done in his whole life somehow.
And how did he turn that around?
A lot of prayer. And that's kind of a whole other story, but it's been kind of a really crazy, miraculous experience. And so I guess my whole motto here is just trust in that intuition, and just trust. And so basically we moved here, we had a lot of really, really awful things happen. Like, we had this thing with the housing. One of the really awful things that happened for me is that, so I actually had studied opera, and so did my husband actually. And I auditioned for the School of Music to get into the opera program at BYU. And I was like, this is why we've been through so much stuff, is so I could get into the School of Music, and this is what's going to make it all worth it. And then I didn't get in, like, by a hair, like by a hair. Like they reached out to me to be like, don't give up, audition for this school and this school, you were so close. And I was devastated. And that's what ended up being my turning point in going back into songwriting. And it was like, it put me on the path I was meant to be on, because I didn't get into that. And so there was all these awful things that happened, but one of the really awful things that happened, that it's so funny, because when we look at our lives and we're in the middle of these terrible things that are going on, all we can see is, we look at our lives through these blinders, right? All we see is the awful things that are happening in the moment. We're like, this is the worst thing. My life is crumbling around me, and all I could see is these terrible, terrible things. But when you can see the whole picture, which none of us can, by the way, we can only imagine it, and we can only look at it from a lens of hope, right? If you can just imagine from a hopeful perspective what your life could be, like how much more sunshine can be there and how incredible it can be. And so that's what, like, this story I'm about to share, that's what it taught me, is how to completely change my perspective on every trial that I face in my life ever. And so what happened was, we were in the fall of 2018. It was October, the very beginning of October. We had just moved in August. Life was really hard. My husband and I were both full-time students in college, and we had 3 kids in school, which is really, really hard to do, to have 2 adults, both parents full time in school, and 3 kids in school. Like getting the
I can't
schedules,
even.
aligned was like utter chaos. It was so hard. Plus, we had therapy all the time because 2 of them had autism diagnoses, and we were doing like a whole bunch of ABA therapy after school, and it was crazy. And so one day, and I remember really clearly because it was like the first Friday in October. We were at the grocery store, and everything was normal, and I was taking my kids to the grocery store, and my son Joshua he's one in the middle, and he's severely autistic and completely nonverbal, and he is my chaos
Did you want
causer.
me? Did you want to do
Oh,
slides?
sure. Yeah, sure. Let's show these slides real quick. And we'll just show a couple of them, and then we'll go back to the story. So we're going to go back to the beginning. Can we go back to the beginning without showing anything in the middle?
Oh,
Here, I can do it. I got it.
okay.
Oops, we're skipping to the middle. There we go. Slide 1. This is Joshua. Oh, we're okay. We just want slide number 1. There we are. Here's Joshua today. Joshua's 11. And here is Joshua back in 2018. This is Joshua at 7 years old. Joshua is the most chaotic. This is my kid who wrecked my truck. He put it into reverse when it had no keys in it, and it rolled backwards and wrecked. This is my kid who set the fridge on fire. This is my kid who
How do you
bounced
set a
off.
fridge on fire?
Apparently, my husband had left the I'm gonna lose my mind. The thing onto the back of the fridge in the very, very back, like on top of the fridge in the very back, and somehow he climbed, got to the very, very back of the fridge, and set a paper that was on a magnet on the fridge on fire. Anyways, Joshua, oh heavens.
That takes talent.
Oh, this is my child who you cannot take your eyes off of him. Cannot take your eyes off of him. One of my funniest stories is he got into a pulling his pants down phase and stood up in the grocery cart at Walmart and pulled his pants straight down. That he was completely and utterly nonverbal, would not sit still for a moment, utter chaos all the time, so cute, but so wild, just so wild. We tried every medication under the sun just to get him to sort of any kind of manageable place. Our doctor told us that he had tried more medications with Joshua than he had with any other kid he had ever had. Joshua is the biggest ball of energy, wildest child you had ever met, ever. Completely and utterly non-verbal. Not a single other than anything at 7 years old. And he also, for the record, was not potty trained. He was actually pee potty trained, and I was actually dead set on never, ever, ever potty training him because his sister was so hard to potty train. But at 4 years old, he stood on the edge of the bathtub and peed from there into the toilet. And so then I was like, shoot, I guess I have no choice but to potty train him now. and so we potty trained him, but he wouldn't poop in the potty because he wouldn't eat anything. Could not get him to eat. He was chronically underweight. We did so much feeding therapy, would not eat, could not get him to eat. He was always underweight. We tried medication to increase his appetite, and he actually ended up having an allergic reaction to it. And it was just kind of this ongoing problem. And so at the very beginning of October 2018, we were at the grocery store and he wanted some orange soda. And I was like, fine, I'll get you some orange soda. I'm hoping we can have some peace this weekend. And then he woke up Saturday morning, and it's something that I will literally never forget. Because when he got up that morning, instead of bouncing off the walls as he normally did, he looked like death all of a sudden, just like out of the blue. He looked like he had suddenly lost a ton of weight. And this is a kid who was already underweight, and he looked like he had lost a ton of weight just overnight. I don't know if you can see it in these pictures. And like, we didn't give him his medications, and all he wanted to do was lay on the floor. and you could see like his cheeks are sunken in, and he wanted to lay on my lap, and he would never sit on my lap, ever. He would never sit on my lap. And I looked at him, and like you could see all of his ribs, and like you could see like this big thigh gap. And I was like, what happened? Like, did he look like this before and I just missed it? Like, what happened? How is this my son? And I actually like messaged his teacher and sent her a picture, and I was like, did he look like this yesterday? And I just didn't notice it. And she was like, no, he looks so different. And it was so scary. And it's kind of funny looking back, because I can see really distinctly how there were two sides of me. There was the mama bear who was like, something's wrong. Something is really, really wrong. And then there was the logical side of me who was like, yeah, he's sick. He'll get over it. This is not anything to freak out about. It looks bad. Calm down. He puked a little bit, but he just needs to sleep and he'll get better. So of course I listened to the logical part of my brain, and we just let him sleep, and we didn't really do much over the weekend. We just let him sleep. And honestly, it was kind of a relief, right? My kid who bounces off the walls, who I had to keep an eye on every single second of the day, laid on the floor all weekend and did nothing. He just curled up in a ball on the floor. Did nothing. He drank a little orange soda. He puked a little bit, but like really not much. Like it wasn't. He cuddled with me. He never cuddled with me. And so then by Monday, he was still sick. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to take him to the doctor. So I took him to the doctor, and he was so weak that I had to carry him in. Like he couldn't get out of the car on his own and walk in. He was 7. He couldn't get out of the car on his own and walk into the doctor's office. I had to carry him in. And then when we got in there, he laid on the floor of the doctor's office, and she barely looked at him. She was like, it's just stomach bug or something. Give it a few more days. He'll be right back to normal. She had the same thoughts I did. And I was like, I've got 3 kids. Like, we've done stomach bugs. We've been through like come on, I got 3 kids. Like, this is not my first rodeo. We've been through this, right? Something's not right here. There's something wrong here. And she was like, yeah, I guess we could do blood work, but he has autism, and that's going to be really, really hard. So, why don't we just give it a few more days, and then you can try, and we'll do blood work if he's still like this in 3 days. And I was like, okay, I guess. And so I took him home.
Interesting.
Say it again.
I said interesting.
Yeah. And so I took him home. And again, my husband and I are both still full-time in college. So we're like, okay, who's missing class this time? Right? Going back and forth. Who's missing class? Who's getting worse grades this time because of this? And then so that was on Monday. And then by Wednesday morning, first thing in the morning, I was in class. And my husband sent me this picture. And I was sitting in my class, and I took one look at the picture, and I was like, I'm done. I'm done. I looked at this picture, and I was like, my kid's dying. I'm done.
Wow.
And I left my class, and I took my kid to the ER. And I carried him into the ER, and they said, that kid has type 1 diabetes. Let's check his blood right now. And I was like, what? 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 He can't have diabetes. He's a skinny little 7-year-old. What? Skinny little 7-year-olds don't get diabetes. That's for like old fat people, right?
Well, and my son has diabetes, juvenile diabetes.
I didn't know anything, obviously. I didn't know anything about type 1 diabetes. Not a dang thing. Nothing. So Joshua being Joshua, it took multiple teams of grown men like 5+ grown men to hold him down, because even though he was dying and couldn't walk or stand on his own, he fought so hard to get one drop of blood from his finger to confirm what his blood sugar was, which was obviously through the roof. So we finally we got the diagnosis, and they actually sent us to a much bigger hospital, Primary Children's Hospital in Salt Lake, and we made our way up there, and they Josh was just, he's so fun. They put these things on his arms to keep him from bending his arms, and they kept trying to prick his finger to get his blood sugar like every 30 minutes, which was super fun because they just wanted me to hold him down when he was admitted to the hospital. And so, I mean, he kept, tearing chunks of my hair out. We kept having to like prick his toes because his fingers, he was so dehydrated that we couldn't get any blood out of him. And the whole time I'm in such a state of shock that it didn't really hit me. And I'm just sitting there like, guys, you don't understand. This is like my worst fear coming true here. I'm like, you don't understand. Any second now, this kid's going to come back to life and he is going to demolish this hospital. Like, he's going to change your internet and he's going to change the language to Japanese because he's done it at my house before. Like, he's just going to tear apart this whole hospital. Like, you just don't understand what he's capable of. And so Primary Children's Hospital was amazing. And they had a nurse like literally just stand by the door all night long to make sure that Joshua stayed asleep so that I could sleep. And he did. And I think I kind of slept. And so we were up there for about 3 days while they tried to pack me full of all of the training I would need, which is a little crazy because I was like so far in shock and out of my mind. And I'm sitting there just like, how? God, how? How could this possibly be fair that my severely autistic nonverbal child is now going to have this lifelong horrific disease on top of everything else he has to deal with for the rest of his life?
As I was mentioning, Mike's when my son was 7, he was diagnosed with juvenile diabetes, and that the training is intense, to say the least.
And so, they're like, okay, so you have to predict what he's gonna eat, and I'm like, he doesn't eat. This is a child who doesn't eat. You don't seem to understand. You can't predict what he will eat. He doesn't eat. This is crazy. He does not eat. And so, we go through the whole thing, and he gets released from the hospital here, and this is my other 2 at the time, Aurora and Benjamin, and they're wild selves because they are a handful and a half as well. And again, both of them also have autism diagnoses. I don't even know what's on the next slide. And this is we can remove that because it doesn't work. And so the end of the story is actually the really important part. So Joshua was in the hospital Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We were home Friday afternoon. We had lots of family come and visit and lots of, great things Saturday. He went back to school on Monday, and he pooped in the potty for the first time in his entire life at school on Monday. We had been in intensive ABA therapy for 4 hours a day for like 4 years up until this point, and could not get him to poop in the potty. And he pooped in the potty for the first time in his life the Monday he got released from the hospital. Probably because he was eating 9 corn dogs a day. He would eat nothing else. It was the only thing he would eat But he was suddenly eating 9 corn dogs a day. We were keep getting stock in corn dogs because he went because right for anyone who doesn't know about type 1 diabetes, there's this honeymoon phase where your child's essentially been starving for a very long time. And so when they finally get this insulin that is allowing the blood sugar to go where it's supposed to go, and so they're not starving anymore, they're suddenly like, oh my gosh, I get to eat and it's doing what it's supposed to do in my body so that I'm not starving. And so they want to eat all the time. And so he was eating a ton, which was incredible. And he suddenly started gaining weight. This is my child who had been underweight for his whole life, and we'd been giving him prescription medications to gain weight. He is now, we've never had a weight problem since that moment, because he's never had an eating problem since that moment. And then on top of that, the big one, within, I don't even know, it felt like no time at all. Within a month, he could say all of his colors. And you know what? I'll just play it on. I'll just play it on my phone for you because you can hear it at least, even if you can't see it very well. Basically, we're 4 years later, and Josh's speech, although it's not perfect, has absolutely skyrocketed. Joshua, again, he had intensive therapy, 4 hours a day after school every day for like 4+ years. From the time he was really little. I mean, he was diagnosed with autism at 3. 4 hours a day. 4 hours a day, and we had 0 improvement in his speech. 0.
And how long did it take him to learn how to speak or to speak?
He immediately started making drastic improvements. Just like immediately.
At what age?
So he was 7 when this happened. He turned 7 in July. This was in October. He could say all of his colors by the end of the month, and now he can say anything. And he honestly, he never shuts up. One of our biggest trials today is that he literally never shuts up. And if it's okay to say this on this show, one of our biggest trials today is that his favorite things to say are penis jokes. Non-stop. And don't get me wrong, he's got childhood apraxia of speech. He's still severely autistic, so he says the same things over and over and over again. But he says so many things, all the things. He says whatever he wants to say, and he says them over and over and over again, and it's incredible. It has been so miraculous. So I took this video last night that I was going to try to share on the screen, and it's not going to work. So I'm going to try to share it here. This is literally last night. I was like, hey, Josh, say some things. So he loves to tell jokes, but they are Josh jokes, which means that he kind of just sort of puts 2 concepts together and wants you to laugh. So last night, those 2 things were like something and Diet Mountain Dew, like foot Diet Mountain Dew. wants you to laugh. So here's him. Let's see. Why is it not going? Okay.
Beat Diet Mountain Dew. Beat Diet Mountain Dew. That's gross. Ew. Jokes. You like jokes? Beat Diet Mountain Dew. Beat Diet Mountain Dew. You do. Beat Diet Mountain Dew. Beat Diet Mountain Dew. What else do you like to say? Benjamin's birthday. Benjamin's birthday? In May. In May. Benjamin's on calendar. I'll put it on the calendar. What else do you like to say? May. In May. What do you want to do this summer? Beach. You want to go to the beach? June. In June.
So he talks all the time. And so what's important, I guess, to mention about the story is that in the months preceding, in the years preceding this, we had prayed so hard. We had prayed. We were like, okay, look, if we pray that Joshua will be able to talk, then one day he'll be able to talk, right? And we prayed, and we had our 3-year-old praying for this. Because even though Benjamin also has autism, he has always been very verbal. Benjamin's very, very, very verbal. So we had Benjamin and Aurora, our 3-year-old and 7-year-old, praying and praying and praying with us that Joshua would be able to talk one day. And we had been praying this for years and years and years. Every night as a family, we would pray that Joshua would be able to talk one day. And just like a month-ish or less even, right before Joshua was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, I actually went on Facebook and I did this live, and I was crying. And I was like, guys, I can't do it anymore. I give up. I cannot keep praying for my son to talk. It's never going to happen. I can't keep hoping and praying for this. I have to just accept. We've done years and years and years of crazy intensive therapy. He has made zero improvement. This is never going to happen. I just have to, and I can't take it anymore. It's killing me. It is tearing my heart out to keep hoping and praying that he's going to be able to talk someday. Like, I can't keep hoping for this. And then, we have this diabetes fiasco and he almost dies, and I'm sitting in the hospital, going, how could you allow this to happen, God? And then I look at it now and I'm like, what an incredible miracle diabetes turned out to be. How can I ever look at my life from a narrow perspective ever again? How can I ever see things from that perspective again without at least being open to the idea that there might be so much more that's just waiting for me that I just can't see yet?
Sure. Absolutely.
And so that's my amazing lesson that I get from what I've experienced with Joshua is like, yeah, diabetes seemed like the most horrible thing I could ever imagine. I watched my son dying right before my eyes, and I felt so helpless, and yet it has changed. Like Joshua is such a miracle, and to hear his voice, and it's so funny because so much in my day-to-day life is him in my face talking at me over and over and over again, and it gets really frustrating. It's what I'm having to remind myself on a really constant basis what a miracle his voice is.
What an inspirational story. And it's stories like this, which is why I love having this podcast, because it's just so inspirational. Yeah, I mean, your faith, your resiliency, your persistency, anything is possible.
Yeah, and his story's changed my life. And it's that's where the whole Seeking Sunshine has come from. And that's why I do my podcast. It's because when you look at these stories of resiliency and of trials, and it's like, what have you learned from it? It's like, when you take a second to pause and look at what you've been through and what the lessons are in it, and you take the lessons and apply them to what you're experiencing now, it changes everything.
Yeah, I remember when my son was diagnosed with diabetes. We were on the way to the beach, and we had to stop in the hospital. And I was upset. His mother was upset.
Yeah, it's awful.
And it was shocking. And before we left, because my son, who's also named as Josh, by the way.
I had no idea.
Yeah, his name is also Josh. He thought life was over.
Yeah,
because he wasn't normal. So I decided to take him up to the children's cancer ward
Mm,
and just say, you're very fortunate.
yeah.
What you have is manageable. It may not be curable yet, but it is manageable.
Yep.
You get a chance to go home. Many of these children may not.
And I've got a friend whose little 6-year-old has brain cancer. And I had the opportunity to have her on my podcast, and following her story is just heartbreaking. And it's so funny to look at your son compared to my son, and like it's been so strange to find blessings and good things in the fact that my son is severely autistic with his diabetes, in
Sure.
that he doesn't care what any other kids think. He actually doesn't care. No cares in the world. Like comparing himself to other kids, nope, that doesn't happen. Like he's just Josh living in his own little bubble. And
Oh,
it's
that sounds
been
like my Josh, who is also a tad autistic, which I might add.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's when you look for the sunshine and you look for something to be thankful for in your unique situation, like you'll find it. And just as equally, if you look for something that's awful, you'll find it.
Oh, yeah. There's always a silver lining if you look for it.
Yep, always.
Things may seem the darkest when you're actually going through it,
Yeah,
but maybe at some point later in time, you may or may not know what good came out of it
yeah,
and what you
yep.
learned.
But being able to stay open, like in those darkest moments, to keep that open heart to like this could, like there's beauty ahead. Like there's potential for so much amazingness ahead.
Oh yeah, because one of the things my wife does, she's a travel agent, and one of the things she specializes in is kids with autism.
That's beautiful.
So she's certified to help parents with kids who have autism travel.
That's amazing. Because that's
Because
so hard to do.
it's extremely hard because I don't want to say they're different. They're not different. They're who they are. Maybe we just don't understand how to communicate with them yet. Maybe the treatment.
We traveled to the beach over spring break, and so now Joshua would like to go back to the beach every single day. And we're in Utah, so we're not quite next to the beach at this exact moment in time. But so that's why he was talking about the beach last night and every second of all time ever since we were at the beach. Because that's one of the loops now, is I want to go back to the hotel and back to the Airbnb and back to the beach and back to grandma and grandpa. And let's go back right now, every day. Like, let's talk about that right now, every second since we went.
Now, you've got 3 kids with autism and your
my husband.
How do you juggle all this?
Oh, it's a lot.
So I was going to say it's amazing.
A lot. So they're all very different. So my oldest, she's very high functioning. She's very calm. She really struggles with executive functioning type things. So she kind of struggles socially. She's a little awkward. Her biggest struggles are like getting her homework done and cleaning her room. So she tends to be the one. She's really calm, and she's my most responsible despite it all. If that makes sense. So I have to pay extra attention to make sure that I'm giving her the attention she needs, because she's the one who's the most easily like forgotten about, because she could just read forever. She just wants to read. She's so easygoing and could just be happy reading a book for the rest of eternity. And then Joshua is the one who needs eyes on him at every second, because he's the one coloring his whole body up with markers. And and then my youngest is 8, and he's also high functioning. He used to have my older 2 got diagnosed at 3. Benjamin got diagnosed at like 7, because he used to have an ODD diagnosis, if you're familiar with that.
I know OCD. I've never heard of ODD.
He also has an OCD diagnosis. ODD is oppositional defiance disorder. It was changed to pathological demand avoidance disorder, which falls under the autism spectrum, but it's pretty much the same as ODD. It's just like, I guess it's anxiety-based ODD.
And what exactly is that?
He's very defiant. He just will not do what you tell him, ever.
Oh, that sounds like most of America.
Until you've met a kid with ODD, you've never met this level of it's extremely difficult.
Wow.
And he also struggles with a lot of violent tendencies. So there was a time when I really wasn't sure if anyone could have a kid that was more difficult than Joshua, because Josh, like, not only is his behavior like so hard, because I have to have my eye on him every single second of the day, but also I have to watch every bite he takes because of the diabetes, and he has no sense of like regulating what he eats. But actually, I've been realizing that Benjamin's at least equally as difficult, if not more. And it's almost a more sensitive topic because Benjamin is so much higher functioning. But Benjamin's extraordinarily defiant and struggles with violence. And he tends to take that out on me when he's upset. And but at the same time, he's so sweet and loving. But it tends to go back and forth. So he's his own little handful.
Now, just my own curiosity. I know how hard it was for my 7-year-old and for myself to test my son's blood sugar.
You know, it's one of the things that I'm weirdly grateful for with the severely autistic part of Joshua and the diabetes, is that Joshua is so very, very set on routine that he's amazing at having his blood sugar taken and tested, and he's amazing at getting insulin, and he's amazing at all of it. Actually, he currently has a Dexcom, and for a while it was a challenge at first to get him to leave the Dexcom on. And we have a very elaborate thing we go through to keep the Dexcom on. Like, so many layers of things that go on. I think we use like four different patches and like 3 or 4 different types of glue. And like, it's very elaborate what we do to keep the Dexcom on. Like, it's a thing. But now that it's been working, like, he does pretty well with it. It took a while to get there, but he's actually, like, when we train new teachers at school and new paras, like, he's a champ at getting needles stuck in his arm. Like, he doesn't really react a lot to pain, so he's really, really great at it. He's never been one of those kids who was like, oh, I can't stand pain, don't touch me with a needle. I mean, at first it was really difficult, and it took him time to get used to it, for sure. But now he's like, pain? What pain? There's no pain.
That's awesome. Now, I'm going to take you from one end to the other.
Yeah.
You've got all this going on. How do you cope for yourself?
I write music.
I was just about to ask.
Yep, I write music. Yeah. Mm-hmm. One of the songs that's coming out on my album is called Evergreen. And I was just finishing up last night, and I was so excited for it to come out. and it's my song about motherhood. And it's really, I really love it because it's sort of a motherhood metaphor with like plants and nature and growth. And it's, um, you know, they grow and there's seasons of growth and so much energy and you never sleep. And the chorus is like, I see the beauty in sleep, but I never get to sleep. And it's all about I will be evergreen because I love you. And it's about motherhood and how mothers, and especially for me as a mother to Joshua and a mother really to all my kids, but especially Joshua, who, you know, is probably never going to leave home. He's never going to grow up and live on his own. You know, it's, I will always, through every night, through all the things, you know, it's, well, and even if he does, like, I'm still always going to be his mother. You know, it's part of
Sure.
being a mother, right? Like, we
Oh,
are
yeah.
evergreen. We are always there as mothers for our kids. So I write music. That's what I do. Is I get to
No,
go sing and do what I love. I'm really passionate about self-care and especially about doing the things that really light you up as part of self-care. And what I'm really passionate about is singing. That's what really lights me up and brings me joy. And so getting to do that really helps me to care for my kids when it's hard.
so do your songs come from, so do your songs come from the inspiration your kids have given you?
Yeah. Yeah. The latest one that I wrote, the I think Evergreen is the second to last, and the latest one I wrote is called Fearless, and it's I want to be fearless because I'm not always fearless, and that has a lot to do with like Joshua's story. It's like you go into these really scary situations, and it's we panic. Like our first reaction when something comes up is to just panic, like to just freak out, like nothing's going to be okay. I don't see where the answer is. I don't see how this can pan out and be okay. I don't see where the miracle is. And instead, like the song talks about, it's like, I just want to be fearless. I want to walk into these situations and just trust that even though I can't see that everything's going to be okay and I can't figure out where the answer is, that it's going to be okay and that the miracles are going to come, that they're on their way. Everything's working out for my good, right? That it's all working out even when I can't see it. And it's okay if I don't see it yet.
That's so true. And you know, there's miracles every day.
Yeah.
Even the miracle of waking up or
Yep.
taking your breath after you wake up.
Yep. You just have to see
Nothing is
them.
ever nothing is ever should be taken for granted.
Absolutely.
But so you and your family are such an inspiration.
Thanks.
So I certainly wish you well on your music and that journey, which I'll probably have to pick up a copy. And
Thank you.
and is so for people that do have autism, what do you recommend that they do?
Keep going. Just keep going. And it's good advice for everybody. Like, we're all just people who are doing our best, and we all come with limitations. Like, we all have areas where we don't totally see clearly. And isn't that our goal in life, is to just see a little clearer every day? And like I'm going to mention this too. It's one of my very favorites. I have a song called Wait, and it's actually, you can go listen to it right now on the pre-order page, and it's my husband's very favorite. Um, and the chorus is, maybe it doesn't have to look the way they said it did. Maybe it's not too late to change your mind or change the world. Don't give up just yet. Wait. We're all different.
This is
Like,
true.
you might feel like you are different and you don't belong. And the truth of the matter is that actually we really all feel like that. You feel like you're different. We really all do. You fit because we all feel like we are different and we don't belong.
And everybody is different.
And we are different. And it's so beautiful. Like, it's so beautiful for us to all be different, because if we were all the same, that would be really boring. It's
I was
beautiful.
thinking the same thing.
It's beautiful to be different. And it's okay for your life to have a different path than somebody told you it needed to be. It's okay for it to go a different way than you expected. And you can find beauty in it no matter what way it goes. And don't give up on the things that you really love.
And on that note, I can't tell you how much I love this podcast. Your stories, your inspiration are amazing. And I see why, and I'll listen to your podcast because now it's inspired me. So,
well, thank you for having me today.
Oh, my pleasure. Your website's going across the screen, as you may or may not see. And are there any other links you'd like to have people?
Everything's on the website. So if you want to follow me on socials, I mean, I'm Karaleigh Garrison everywhere, but you can find them all on the website. Everything's all there.
Okay, well, I guess that will be a wrap. And now the only thing I have to do is stop the recording. So thank you so much. And hope to see you again.
Bye.
Bye. I'm Jeff Kay, founder of My Digital Memories. We preserve, protect, and organize your precious memories, which include your photographs, negatives, videotapes, home movies, records, and cassette tapes. These can be stored for today and future generations. After our parents died, my sister and I were cleaning out their home, and we came across boxes of photos that we wanted and our kids wanted. I knew I had to digitize all these paper photographs, slides, and negatives so they could be shared with family and friends. In My Digital Memories, we take your photos and most types of media and digitize them. We're able to restore photographs and remove unwanted scratches or blemishes. We also digitize home movies. We deliver the end product into any type of storage imaginable, whether it's on a USB thumb drive, a DVD, or storage in the cloud. We make it easier for you to share your digital memories with family and friends. Were you aware your family memories, paper photographs, and other media were only designed to last a maximum of 20 years in a climate-controlled environment? People care about their memories, genealogy, and where they come from. My client Sally gave me countless VHS tapes and had no idea of the treasure she was about to find. She heard her father's voice for the first time. Her father died in Vietnam and she never met him. She broke down in tears and was extremely grateful. Let's always remember our pets, our furry friends who are loyal to the end. Please contact me to preserve what is most valuable in your life for today and future generations. You are never forgotten with My Digital Memories.